Push the record button. Great. So tonight, our guest speaker is Hannah Sanger. Hannah is on the City of Pocatello's Hannah is the City of Pocatello's environmental administrator and serves as the urbanized area's stormwater permit manager. Since 2008, Hannah has been intimately involved with developing and implementing programs to comply with the stormwater permit and address other environmental interests of the city, including planning and managing stormwater, beautification, and riparian restoration activities within Pocatello. Since 2015, she's been spearheading development and implementation of the Portneuf River Vision. Hannah holds an MS in Resource Policy and Behavior and an MA in Curriculum Development from the University of Michigan and a BA in Neuroscience from Colgate University. Tonight, Hannah will be presenting about the Portneuf River Vision, covering a brief history of the Portneuf River in Pocatello, Idaho, before diving into the city's restoration goals and plans for the river. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here with all of you. And it was great. My husband grew up in Coos Bay, Oregon. So, Paula, you're one of a few people I've met from there as well. Anyway, I'm going to share my screen. All right, let's see if I can get a slideshow. All right, so I'm going to talk today about the city's vision for the Portneuf River running through Pocatello. And if you have questions at any time, feel free to chime in when I'm on a slide. So just to orient you, on the left, you can see a little map of Idaho. And the headwaters of the Portneuf River starts up here at the top of the watershed on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation and at Chesterfield Reservoir right here. It leaves the reservation and it meanders through a number of counties, primarily Bannock County, and goes through a number of cities. In the town of Ingham, it gets input from our largest tributary called Marsh Creek, which I'll talk about a little bit. And then it flows northwest through the city of Pocatello out to the Snake River at American Falls. So a couple things you'll notice here is that there's kind of a pass here where back in the day, we had a lot of basalt flow that really, and earthquakes in this area that changed how water flows. But we have a lot of flat valley floors and resulting flooding in the spring and winter months from that. This is the city of Pocatello, and the river runs through it. Right down through the old historic part of downtown. And it's in a concrete channel because in the 1968, the Army Corps built a concrete channel and a levee. So there's about 4.5 miles of levee and then 1.5 miles of concrete channel for flood control. And so this is the levee system. So it's all fairly not attractive. Army Corps requires us to remove most of the vegetation, and the concrete channel is just a U-shape concrete channel. And upstream, why can't I? Oh, sorry. Let me there we go. Okay. Upstream, the river looks like this in some areas, and so this is kind of a vision of what we would like to see the river return to looking like in the city. And then in other areas, it's going to have to be more developed for human use and impacts than just a number of willows and shrubs. So the Portneuf River, our primary pollutant is sediment. So just upstream of the city, in the town called Ingham, we have a large tributary flows in and the river turns brown. And it's just the banks of the tributary Marsh Creek are just eroding away. And university actually did some studies. They looked at nitrate isotopes to determine where the nitrate was coming from. So was it atmospheric deposition into the creek? Was it washing off of farm fields? Or was it coming off of the banks of the stream? And they determined it's all coming off of the banks of the stream. And that's the source of the sediment as it washes downstream and eventually turns the Portneuf River pretty brown in town. We also have a lot of stormwater going off of our city streets into town, and it's pretty gross. We don't have, a lot of nasty chemicals. So it's agricultural use upstream of us, and we don't have a history of having large industry in the city of Pocatello, and so that just really limits the amount of chemicals flowing into the river, which is great. So we have this picture from about 125 years ago of the river in Pocatello, and this is Raymond Park for Stephanie that we're looking at. And the river meanders through here, and right now it's straightened in a concrete channel here. But this is a fun historic picture for locals to look at and spot the changes over time. And the city was really developed at this time because of the railroad. We were a big railroad town back in the day. And then Congress had actually purchased the city of Pocatello from the tribes, and then everybody started moving onto the reservation. And so then some more treaties happened and more land was acquired for the city. So this was the area circled here is the area we were looking at. It's been straightened a little bit by the 1920s. And these old parcel maps are really great to look at because you can see the river straightening over time, and you can see the change in housing and development of the town just looking at, how we were drawing it out. And so at this time, we were straightening the river really because when they laid out the city, they laid out the river, and you can kind of see it just cuts through the blocks. And the Bureau of Indian Affairs, when they laid out the city of Pocatello, they did it commonplace to how things were done back then, and they laid out the town parallel to the railroad tracks. And they did not pay attention to where the river was, and they did not pay attention to where the hillsides were. And our hillsides go up at super steep angles where you can't drive a car on the city street up them. And the river, obviously, it'll flood. And so the roads go straight across the river. People's parcels were on both sides of the river, little in-town parcels. And so we're still dealing with the consequences of both of those decisions today. Fortunately, that practice was pretty short term. So people were using the river as a sewage system, as you were apt to. We started sewering the town, but as of the 1960s, this picture's from the 60s, there were still about 15 sewage pipes going straight into the river from people's homes. And I talked to a woman a few years ago, and I told her about the plans to restore the river, and she goes, "Hannah, I gotta tell you, when I was a little girl, we moved into this house in town on the river, and we thought it was so exciting because you could flush the toilet and then you could run out to the river and you could see it float away." Okay, yeah, there we go. So That was our river. It was just a wasteway. It was filled with, in additions to sewage pipes, it was just stuff was chucked into the river, hoping it would float away. And that stuff accumulates and it clogs under bridges and everything else. So in the 40s, the city looked at deepening and straightening the river to deal with all of this clogging that had happened. And they contracted with the Army Corps to do some design drawings. But ultimately, those designs were too expensive for the city. So the city, there's a cost share for the city when the Army Corps does a project, and there's probably I think at the time it was a 10 or 20% cost share, and we said, no way, we can't afford this. So the 40s came and went. And then in the 1962, there was some really bad flooding in 62 and in 63, and all over the Snake River watershed. There was a lot of bad flooding. And so federal money was put forth to develop flood control throughout the entire Snake River watershed. And so the city said to the Army Corps, we will enter into a contract with you to deal with the flooding. And I will talk about that in a minute. So our flooding was exacerbated because, the railroad tracks stopped some of the upstream flooding. So that flood water has to go somewhere, and it's going to get worse downstream of the city or in the city limits. So when the railroad came through in the 1860s, they cut off a lot of the floodplain from the river, and we're just still dealing with that today. So in 68, we started building the concrete channel, and they pretty much built it right where the river was, and then they straightened it in other places. And we got some great flood protection. So the river was designed for a 100-year flood. The Army Corps built stuff to a 1-to-1 cost-benefit ratio. So they were looking at, should we build the flood control project to hold 3,000 CFS of water? Should we build it to hold 6,000 CFS of water? Should we go for 8,000? And 6,000 CFS provided that 1-to-1 benefit. If we went to a bigger concrete channel, we were going to have to replace bridges, and the cost would have been too much. So that was kind of the determining factor of what the whole area was designed for. This was written into an act of Congress. So in order to change the flood control capacity of the project, it'll require another act of Congress. So we would have to get the Army Corps to say to Congress, this is a good idea, please do it. So that is doable. It is just very challenging, as you might imagine. So at the time in the 60s, nobody, our river was in really bad shape for environmental health. So nobody cared about the fish. And so they really can't swim up the concrete channel. There's too little water in it in the summer. There's nowhere for them to hide or rest. There's no recreation or access on this right now. And it really hasn't provided any economic community development. We don't have our nicest homes along the river where it's in a flood control project. But we are stuck with it. So we asked in 2015, 2016, we asked the community what did they want? And we did an incredible amount of outreach to sort of try and get the community to think through what they would like to see. And through that whole process, we learned that community members were mostly interested in water quality and ecosystem health, as well as recreation and access. Flood control a concern, maintenance costs a concern as well. So we developed a vision to revitalize environmental, recreation, economic development opportunities while increasing community pride, connectivity, and quality of life. And so I want to talk to you now about some of the projects we're implementing on this broken stream as we return it to life. So one of our top priority projects early on was a water trail. 10 years ago, almost nobody floated the Portneuf River in the city of Pocatello. And I think I could probably count on my hands the number of people I knew who had been on the river in town. People would go upstream and do some floating, but nobody really, a lot of people thought you couldn't. They thought the water quality was gross. They just didn't use it. So we just started building access points in the levee system, and then upstream and downstream to get access. We also, did a lot of outreach explaining that, yes, it's a silty river and there's some areas with high bacteria counts, but as long as you don't stick your fingers in your mouth, you'll be fine. It's not a dangerous river to be in. You might get a little muddy, but it's just fine for floating. So we have put in, 8 access points, and we'll put in one more, hopefully in the next couple of years. And that has really changed the river. We have thousands of people floating it now, and we have a event on the river every summer. So anyway, some pictures of folks floating it, and in the bottom you can see some of our access points being installed. And then we've developed a website where people can get more information about the river and look at more historic pictures, and also see these access points and zoom in on where to go and learn more about options for floating the river. And then we also, back in 2016, worked on developing project ideas of what we would like to do. And so I'm just going to talk to you about some of these because the federal government had a lot of money about 5 years ago that they were giving out. And we applied for that money, and we've been really successful. And so provided our grants don't get terminated, which we just breathe every day about that. We have a bunch of projects, which is super exciting. So we have a project, the river runs in this dark blue line on the right side of the screen. And what we want to do is stick culverts under the railroad tracks. So at high flow, we can flood where the river used to go before the railroad came in. We can only do it at high water because of water rights issues. So you can't do it at low water and take away water rights. But in the winter and spring, we could reactivate these old oxbows, create wetlands. So we've just begun this design process. Will take about 18 months to complete the design. So we're super excited to see what this provides. It'll probably provide some flood control as well. Maybe we can install some sediment ponds to improve water quality in the river. So we're also, with this, getting a greenway trail, which is this light brown line that will run through this area, so to connect community members to the area. We got funding to put in the Greenway Trail in about 3 years. It will be done. So this blue line is where a new Greenway Trail, so a 10-foot wide pedestrian and bicyclist trail. It'll be about 3 miles long here, and then it will run back along a street called South 5th Avenue, which connects to a high school, and there's no sidewalks. So you see kids and people in wheelchairs and all hours of the day and night walking in the street, and it's a 4-lane road. So we're super excited about that, and it has a super short turnaround. And then we have money to implement a wetland restoration project in the levees. So this bottom left is kind of what the levees look like today, and you can see it's hard to see, but there's some riprap on the levee. And on the other side of the levee is a ball field that's no longer used as a ball field because it's for fast pitch softball and is not big enough for slow pitch softball, and everybody plays slow pitch softball today. So we want to move the levee around the ball field. So we've been working with the Army Corps of Engineers to get their permission to move the levee around the ball field, which has been quite a process to get their permission. So we're still working on our 60% design plans with them, but this project should be built in a couple years and will include creating a wetland in the city with ADA access down to the river, and pavilions for events and community gathering spots. So we're super excited about this. It's right on the edge of downtown and should bring the river to everybody in town. And just a aerial picture of some parking lots associated with this project. And again, the levees run right here, right now, and we'll move them to follow this gray path, sort of going around the ball field. So it's not a very big project, but it should be pretty transformational for Pocatello. We also think it's really important as we develop the river to think about not only developing the river itself, but making sure people can get to the river. So in the city of Pocatello, we have Idaho State University, and we want to create a greenway pathway for ISU students to get from campus to downtown and the river. And so we got a grant to essentially do that, which is also exciting. And then I'm going to move into some dreams. I have no idea when these will happen. I will be very old. But as we're looking at the concrete channel, ways we can transform the concrete channel and get access and transform it from a U-shaped channel to something that people can walk down. So there might be a series of steps here, right by a bridge where we have space, and we have to do it where we can buy land. There's some parks that are right along, and so they could be sloped down to the river. And again, some more step ideas. And so we've been working with Idaho State University and Utah State University to develop these concepts, which has been really great to bring students into the design process and helping us think outside the box before we bring in the professional engineers. Oh, I already saw that one. Our river also looks like this now. So we have these trees I call them crack willows, and they are an invasive willow tree. So not the shrub, a big tree that falls into the river and creates debris jams. Makes it really hard to float the river. So we're working to develop a plan for removing those and having a floatable river. And so we have a lot of money to spend, which is really exciting. So, we have $4.5 million on this levee project at Centennial Rainy Park. We have $500,000 to design the oxbows. We got $1 million for trees, although that's been terminated. We got some more money to study the watershed, some fuel reduction money, and then some transportation money for everything. So we are washing more money than we've ever had, which is super exciting to implement these projects because they're all really, really expensive right now. But that is what we'll be working on for the next, 3 to 5 years. And then we call it the Pokey Paddle. So on June 13th, we have a floating event down at that Centennial Rainy Park and bring the community out there for beer and hot dogs and such. And we provide a free shuttle for floating and community organizations will rent you kayaks and tubes. And so it's a lovely, fun way to kick off the summer and connect the community back to the river and start to get the community more engaged in thinking about the river. So, and with that, that's kind of where we are going with the river. And I'll stop and open it up to questions. Thank you. That was probably really fast. I guess 23 minutes, not bad.
Oh, that was great. Thank you so much. Very inspirational what you guys have proposed. It's exciting.
It is exciting.
And I have to say this, I've seen your presentations like over the years, and every time I'm like, oh, something new, oh, something else, oh, something happened, oh, money is coming this way. It's really exciting. Like, even if I'm sad that more Pocatello people didn't come, because it's nice to see like the progression and like the things that are actually happening.
It is. I mean, the COVID money and the bipartisan infrastructure law, it's just going to be transformational for our town. So, okay, Mary Ann.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, and then Marie.
Excuse me just a minute, without me, my cat has decided to help me eat my dinner. I got distracted by the phone call, so.
So you did say this money is federal? Is it from it's from the IRA?
Yes.
It's from the IRA, yep.
Are you?
Eating my dinner and my cat decided to.
Connie, can you mute her?
Hey, yeah, let me see if I can do that.
Her cat decided to eat her dinner. So anyway, I also noticed that it looks like there's salmon that have returned to part of the river.
No, we don't have salmon because there's Twin Falls is just downstream of us, and it is too tall for salmon. So
I saw a picture of the fish. Okay.
It was a cutthroat trout.
Okay.
So we have our special species of trout, but unfortunately no salmon. So no salmon money.
That's so yeah. I was curious about the IRA grant money and how it's going, but it looks like you still have it.
We do. We've only lost about 660,000 so far, which is rough to lose, but
it is. Well, what about your wildfire money? I'm curious about that. You still have that?
We still have that. We lost it for about a month, and then that came back. So the wildfire money seems to not be touched at all, which is great news for wildfire. They seem to not be touching any wildfire personnel. They have touched all the support staff for wildfire personnel. So
right.
That will be a problem this summer when they go to set up camp.
Right. So my other question along these lines is, because we're recently having to deal with this where on the transportation board, but anyway, where I'm at, and that is the DEI. So have you had to change language in order to hold on to your money?
What did we have to do? I was writing a grant that was due in February, and so I had to remove the DEI language that had been required from the grant. And then we were told that staff at EPA were going to have to go through our grants line by line and remove DEI language, and then that would be given to Doge, and Doge would check it for DEI language, and then if it didn't have any DEI language, then we would get to keep it. But we haven't seen any new grant agreements, so I'm not sure what happened there and what was like rumorville or gonna happen versus what actually did happen. Because if they removed the DEI language from our grant agreement, we would have to re-sign it.
Yeah, I know.
And
I'm curious.
We haven't re-signed, but we don't have any grants that are really heavily tied to DEI. So they all included some language, but our grants were, you know, about greenway trails and riparian restoration. And so I think that's why we've been able to keep them, is because there's just less of a DEI tie-in.
All right. Well, I'll let somebody else ask a question and I might have more, but okay, thank you.
Yep.
I know besides DEI, the other thing is some grants with any language about climate change are at risk. So I'm sure that could impact you in the future, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think, you know, we weren't doing anything with solar panels or electric chargers, and that's what helped us. There certainly was lots of climate change language in our grant agreements. I didn't review them, to be honest.
Yeah.
But again, they weren't tied heavily to what we were doing. I mean, greenway trails have a climate change impact, but it's not very large. Yeah, it's been quite an experience.
I bet. Speaking of greenway trails, that's actually my question. I don't know much about greenway trails, so
Yeah.
could you explain a little bit about that?
I should. It's our Pocatello way of talking about a pedestrian and bike trail. So a paved 10-foot wide, 12-foot wide trail that has no motorized use. And so that's really what they are. It's just a way to get bikes through town safely.
Are they separated from the road? They don't run along the road, do they? Or do
No, not usually. You know,
Okay.
sometimes they do, but in general, they're separated from the road.
Right. Oh, good.
Yeah. So we've got a growing network. We're probably slower to have many of them compared to a lot of communities, but people are enjoying them, I'd say.
I would think that a lot of the proposals, things that are happening, and Vision for the Future would really add to your tourist economy.
Yeah, I think our tourist economy is growing. We're on the way to Salt Lake, and so we get a lot of people stopping in for that. We get a lot of people stopping in to go mountain biking and hiking, and that seems to be a big push. And we really haven't promoted our trails in the river much. And so I can see that coming in the future with these restoration projects, it really tying into future tourism. A lot of the communities around us in the mountains, their trails don't dry out until later in the summer. So we are a destination for them to come and go biking and hiking early in the season. And then we go to their places in the summer when it's too hot here.
Awesome.
I don't have a
another
question.
Yeah,
I
go
don't have a
ahead,
question,
Cheryl.
but I wanted to compliment you on your forward thinking, and it looks absolutely marvelous. I think
Thank
that you know, you all in the right direction, and I hope you can the funds stay where they're needed.
That's what we all hope every day. Open the email and
Yeah.
see what comes.
So I appreciated the history that you shared. And one of the thoughts that I had when you were talking about how the river used to be used as a sewer system, I'm guessing, was that typical of lots of places? It probably was.
Yeah.
I don't think about.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, and because sewering, you know, they built up the town and then they developed a sewer system after lots of people were living in town. I mean,
Wow, it's so
initially
it's
you had
interesting.
your
It's like you wouldn't think of
outhouses
it.
and I grew up on the East Coast, and I think we just sent it out to the ocean, and there's a lot more water there.
Ah,
We sent it
Yeah.
out to Puget Sound, Connie.
yeah,
We did, yeah.
that's probably true.
We did.
Yeah, I don't think about these things, but it
Oh,
was
yeah, we did.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm glad we no longer find sewer lines going to the river anymore.
Yay.
I think we did one right when I arrived about 15, 20 years ago.
Huh.
Wow, that's not that long ago.
Yeah, it's not that long
No, it's
ago.
coming from some apartment complex in Old Town, was connected to the stormwater line, and
Mm.
Wow.
What about septic? Do you have any homes that are close, that are along the river, that are on septic? Because that can be a problem.
we don't have an issue with septic systems leaching into the river. They are leaching into our groundwater, and which is the source of all of our drinking water. And so it's not the bacteria; those get captured really fast. It's the nitrate. And so that is our issue. So one of these grants is actually going to take a whole bunch of homes off of septic systems and put them onto sanitary sewer. So that's super exciting. Yeah, but it's a never-ending process as we continue to expand the city and build more septic systems.
So I'm sorry, did anybody else have a question before I blab some more? So the river runs along some farms, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Are the farmers working with you? Are they happy about this? I'm curious.
Yeah. So we have this really silty soil here. It's called loess. So glacial erosion, and then the loess blew in however many thousands of years ago, and it's about 40 feet deep. So highly erosive soils. So in the 40s, when the tractors started coming into being, everybody started plowing all of the hillsides of the farm fields surrounding the Portneuf River and the tributary streams. And all of that then started eroding into the stream. And they talked about having to plow the roads back in the 60s and 70s. And so with the Soil Conservation Service got started then, and they started putting in, ponds and terraces and everything. And we actually, thanks to Idaho State University, has done some remarkable work of, and our Department of Environmental Quality, we've been tracking the sediment load in our stream over time. And they can normalize the flow so that, when you have more flow, usually you get more sediment in the river. So if it's a really high water year, the amount of sediment that flows down the river is higher than in a very dry year. So they're able to normalize it. So every year looks like it has the same amount of water. And they can track the sediment with that normal flow amount. And they've shown that since the 70s, our sediment levels have severely dropped, which has been, it's like you kind of know it, but it's hard to tell that it goes from dark brown to light brown. I mean, it all still looks a little bit brown. So we're no longer plowing the roads in the summer, so that's great. And we have a lot better land management practices. The cows are generally out of the streams. And the worst problems are taken care of, but there's a whole mess of lingering issues with streams that have no vegetation on them, streams that still have cows having access. And so there's a lot of work to be done. So one of our grants is we have money to hire an outreach coordinator to go work with these upstream landowners and see if we can get some more vegetation planted on the stream banks. And so especially these shrubby willows. So that's the goal, is to start to invest in that landowner riparian restoration, and to provide the landowners with the tools to do it, and the willows to plant, because it's really benefits all of us downstream. So it's not a cost that they should have to bear on their own. So we're hopeful that our the outreach to hire them. So hopefully they will be super successful. We'll see.
Well, and even, having people in the community pitch in with that kind of thing, maybe a couple times a year, I don't know, but it just seems like it would be something that people would be invested in helping with, to volunteer.
I think so. I mean, it's really fun to go plant willows. You use this thing called a willow stinger, and so it shoots water into the ground. And then you stick the willow stem, like you've just gone out and cut a willow stem that's an inch in diameter or half an inch, and then you stick that into the hole and it's planted. And it will grow roots. Willows are like one of those plants that you can just stick in water and they'll grow roots. You don't have to provide a whole lot of care for them. I mean, 60% of the willows will die, but 30% of them will live, and then that's plenty. So yeah, I think it'll be a great community engagement project because it's super fun to go do restoration work. Those are some of the funnest days I have.
Anybody else? I know we can't see you right now, Paula, but if you're there and if you had any questions or comments, if you can hear us.
I can hear you. I think it's a tremendous project. I'm really very impressed.
Thank you.
Cool.
And of course, we're surrounded in Coos Bay. We're surrounded by water everywhere. So
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I personally, I just love rivers. I mean, I grew up with a river going through our farm, and yeah, I'm drawn to them. That's why I was thinking people are going to be drawn to your community with the improvements that you're going to be doing. It's really awesome.
I hope so.
I think it's going to eventually be a source of pride instead of a source of embarrassment for us.
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's terrific. Well, any other comments or questions before I do a few closing things?
Well, just one more.
Yeah.
Just because you were talking about a community project, I was just curious what kind of groups you are working with around this project.
Yeah, so we have a watershed group that has mostly agency staff on it. And so we want to expand that to include more agricultural producers as well. I work with the Chamber of Commerce pretty heavily. And so they sponsor our Poke Paddle, our floating event on the river. So that's really great. So the city co-sponsors that with the Chamber of Commerce. And then, we work with a group called Portneuf Valley Partners. So again, another community beautification group that just helps out on these projects. Idaho State University is a huge partner in it. And then really any community groups that want to get engaged, I certainly will work with. A little bit of work with K-12 as well. But we are lacking staff to do a ton of outreach. So, really the K-12, it depends on a teacher to say, hey, Hannah, can you guys come out and do this with us? And I say, okay, yeah, we'll make it work. But we're not setting it all up on our own. We're just too short-staffed to do that. Yeah.
What about your conservation districts, Hannah? Do they?
So we have a soil water conservation district that we partner with a lot, and they have 6 elected board members and then a part-time staff member who kind of organizes them. And their board members are not super engaged in projects, I would say.
That's too bad.
Yeah. And then we don't have a lot of conservation nonprofits in town. So those are more in Boise, Idaho. So they're on my email list and get my meeting minutes, but there's not staff members in town to help organize projects. So.
Well, excellent presentation. Thank
Well,
you.
Thank you much. It was great talking to you all, and look forward to visiting many of your hometowns, actually. It was hearing where you all are and thinking about summer trips.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
come to Olympia. Olympia's
Yeah.
great.
So.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording as soon as I can find it. Let's see. Ah, jeez.